What was once Hurricane Camille has now moved into the Mississippi Delta north of Jackson. In her wake, she left at least 22 persons dead in Mississippi and in Louisiana. Those in 2 states and in Alabama have been left homeless on most of the Gulf Coast without electricity, gas, and even drinking water tonight. The President Nixon, has declared Mississippi a disaster area. The Coast Guard reports that 16 persons died in Biloxi and 2 of them in Gulfport. Civil defense officials in Mississippi say that 2 persons died in Moss Point and 1 at Ocean Springs. 1 man was killed when the storm hammered at the low-lying areas of Plaquemines Parish. 1 man was killed in Triumph, Louisiana. That's around Uris. A spokesman for the Insurance Information Institute estimates damage to South Louisiana at $6 million, but the estimate runs considerably higher for Mississippi. For our first report, the man who traced that killer storm, meteorologist Al Duckworth.
Hurricane Camille started out as a tropical storm on the 13th of August, some 60 miles west of Gay Cayman Island. Moved northward through over the western tip of Cuba, became a hurricane on the 15th of August, and continually moved toward the New Orleans area. Camille cannot be considered just another hurricane or an ordinary hurricane. It was a record breaker. Now, while all the damage has not been assessed as yet, we don't know how much it's done, we do know a few things about it. Its winds hit 190 miles per hour, and that's a very high wind speed for any Atlantic hurricane, as this one is considered. The internal pressure, the second lowest ever recorded in this hemisphere, down to 26.61 inches of mercury. And if you look at your home barometer, you'll see that's off the end of the dial. Also, and probably the most destructive force of any hurricane, is the water that it brings along with it. Camille took 20 feet of water inland along the Gulf Coast. And until this time, the record high water for the United States from a hurricane was 15 feet. This happened in September of 1884 in the Tampa Bay area. And most of the damage that you see along the Gulf Coast was done by water. Camille was a killer, one of the worst hurricanes of this century, if not the worst. We'll have to wait, check the record books to see just how bad it was. But I think the city of New Orleans should feel thankful that the storm was not larger, nor did it come closer to New Orleans than it did. If it had come closer, or if the storm were larger, if the winds were not concentrated in a very small area close to the center, this would have made all of the hurricanes that hit this area look like a Sunday school picnic. Bill?
While New Orleans did miss the brunt of the storm, the Gulf Coast caught the full fury of Camille, and like a woman scorned, she left in her wake mute, terrible evidence of her wrath. Now, newsman Jim Metcalf and cameraman John Embry left for the Gulf Coast hours before the hurricane howled into being. Tonight, they're still there, they're safe, but they are marooned. Here is Jim Metcalf's extraordinary report on what must have been the longest night of his life.
We are at the Holiday Inn, which is on the beachfront. We are cut off from downtown Biloxi, and for all intents and purposes, by land at least, the rest of the world. The sights to be seen after this unbelievable storm are in themselves unbelievable. Rubble, litter, devastation everywhere. Police are patrolling the streets, the National Guard, and the Army. No food, no water. That's the picture as it is here. We have no communication with the outside world, as I said, except what we hear on radio. Possibly the people in New Orleans know more of what's going on right now than we do. But we do know that it was devastating. The last reports we heard, at least 12 along the entire Gulf Coast, and that is sure to rise. Last night, during the height of the storm, we were on the 2nd floor of the building. We could feel the building shake. Water was coming in around the door. Our car was parked down below our room in front of the motel. We opened the door during the height of the storm, peeked out. The car was nowhere to be seen. We found it this morning around the corner, not damaged too severely, but still not in running condition. It will be weeks, possibly months, before the complete toll in lives and property of this storm is known. This is Jim Metcalf in Biloxi.